Welcome to the Student Affairs One Thing, a podcast that asks a simple question of seasoned student affairs professionals. What is one thing you have learned that has shaped your professional career? I'm your host, Stuart Brown, the developer of studentaffairs.com, one of the most accessed websites by student affairs professionals. On our pages, we have the most cost-effective job posting board, listing hundreds of open student services positions and a wide range of webinars. On today's episode, I am very pleased to have John Denio, Associate Vice President for Student Affairs at Bryant University. Welcome to the program, John.
Thank you, Stuart. Thank you for having me.
So, John, what is your one thing?
This is going to sound simplistic, but I think it is something that many people in our field believe, but not everybody does. And this has kind of been a personal and a professional mantra for me. So my one thing is two words: people matter. And again, as I said, it's simplistic, but I can give you kind of the whereabouts from that, or the origins, if you will.
Well, I think it's simple, but I think sometimes the simple things are the ones that matter. And we always overlook those because maybe we're looking for the highfalutin one thing or something that no one's ever thought of. And we sometimes neglect the obvious. So what's the story behind people matter?
My introduction to higher education, really my first mentor, I'll give you the quick backstory. Went to community college, my first 2 years of community college, played basketball there, was recruited, and was all set to go to a school in upstate New York. Actually went to June orientation after I received my associate's degree. And then when they were looking at my schedule for the junior year at this new institution, let me know that I would have to retake my sophomore year. This was the first time I'd ever been told that information, and basically lose a year of credits, which I said, no, I'm not going to do that. And we've never spoken about this before. So here I was in late June, months before school starts. Unfortunately, the school I ended up at, SUNY Brockport, we had already talked to them. I'd been recruited by them for basketball. And my mother reached out to admissions and connected with their director of admissions, a gentleman by the name of Jim Cook. And wonderful, wonderful man's kindness, compassion, grace, to the extreme, to the point where it's very noticeable and impactful on the people around him. And he was able to, they had space in their class. He got me in, and I ended up going to Brockport, had a wonderful experience there. And Jim actually hired me, knowing my experience, hired me as an ambassador in the admissions office my junior year, and got to do college fairs with him and high school visits and all the things related to admissions. And he was so impactful on me. But again, the biggest thing is how I watched him, how he interacted with all the people on campus, whether it be a parent or a student or a maintenance worker or a faculty member or a senior administrator. And the grace and the way he conducted himself and the kindness, and he was I'll use another analogy, as Mr. Rogers-esque, a lot of attributes that Mr. Rogers, you saw in him on this TV show and elsewhere. So that was very impactful to me. And I think at a young age college age learned kindness can be very powerful and very impactful in working with people, and very beneficial as well. And again, I knew that growing up with my values from my family and so on and so forth, but to see that in place in the professional setting as you're a young person, ready to move on to the next step of your career, it was very impactful. So a lot of those lessons I learned from him, as I moved through my career, tried to integrate that everybody mattered, every situation mattered, regardless of how I felt about the individual or what the individual may have done, especially in my conduct days. So that's been my mantra, is, people matter, and try to take that mindset every day in my work, knowing that it's not as common as you'd like it to be in our society, and even in higher education settings as well.
I think sometimes people are maybe taken aback because they don't expect that they think it's going to be a certain situation is going to be adversarial right from the get-go. And the person's not going to take them as an individual with their concerns, with their background. And so to come at them with a lot of empathy and caring really probably got you through a lot of tough situations sometimes.
Yes, I would definitely agree with it. I think, I look at kindness and humility. A lot of times people look at those as I guess, soft areas, or potentially some people look at that as weaknesses. I view them just the opposite. I view them as superpowers, and I really believe that what can be achieved, what can be accomplished with that. And like you said, I've been in many situations, whether it be with students or colleagues or administrators, where they think, we're going to come at it, tooth for tooth, and we're ready to fight here. And then I'll come at from the kind of the opposite end of the perspective. And I think that can be very powerful in trying to rectify situations and come to common ground and common understandings. Again, it seems so simple, but again, I've seen many situations and worked with a number of people where that was not always there in the forefront of their thinking or in their behavior towards others. Working in higher education, working in any organization, obviously finance plays a big part of it, and I recognize that you have to have a good bottom line. But like many professionals, I've been in institutions where at times I felt that the bottom line was giving greater consideration than the individuals who would be impacted by that. So that you learn lessons from that as well, and you try to find the balance in that and understanding that, yes, the school has to be in a good position, but sometimes to save a few dollars, we end up spending more dollars if we lose a person or we cut a position, and then down the road, you've got to go back out and refill that position. You end up spending more money. That's a scenario. I've seen that happen in a number of situations as well. So it's applicable in one-on-one relationships, and it's applicable, I guess, as a guiding force for larger organizations or organizations proceed with their decision making.
Have you had people over the years come to you and verbalize to you what you felt from the director of admissions, that they said, John, I want to thank you for, or I admired the way you handled this?
Yes. I've had some folks that have shared that positive feedback with me, and obviously that I appreciate that. And it's also nice to get not the recognition, but acknowledgement of what I'm intending to how to interact with those folks is being received in that manner. And my attempt and my goal is successful in my interaction with those folks. And, a lot of times I've had people who, initially on paper maybe seem as an adversary or somebody where I'm going to have conflict with. And then in the long run, through those interactions, through that relationship, through the, trying to extend grace and compassion and care, you end up having a very positive relationship. And I can think of some colleagues where we maybe didn't get off on the right foot initially, but through, joint efforts by both parties, you find a great relationship, a great friendship, and for some that have lasted for a number of years. So, and I think it's also the other thing that's been helpful in particularly working with parents, because I do, like a lot of us, do a lot of work with the parents, and it's usually parent calling because there's a concern or an issue or a problem with their student. And I'm a father of four, and having two of my kids through college, one almost through college and one about to begin college, that has also helped me to gain a perspective in my work as well, to be more understanding, maybe more understanding than maybe when I wasn't a parent or earlier in my career has been beneficial to help me in trying to help them. And then the bottom line is I want them to feel like they've got somebody at the institution. For many of them, an institution is this large conglomerate of who do I turn to, where do I go, who's going to help me. And my hope is in my interaction that as I say to them, if no one else or you can't find who you need to talk to, come back to me or work with me, and I will get you to where you need to be or where your student needs to be, and so on and so forth. And I've had many positive feedback from parents, and even had connections over the years as their student was here at the school and beyond, where we maintained a connection due to the support and the assistance and the advocacy that we've been able to provide to them and their student.
I think a lot of grad students, new professionals, when they are going into the field, they're feeling their way around. How do they conduct themselves? Is this something that with the People Matters that you either overtly talk to this group about, or is it really you feel by demonstrating what you are putting into practice that really is going to affect them?
I've tried to be more of the walk and talk the talk type of, and lead by example type of thing versus the words. And hopefully by seeing that behavior, that it'd be, help younger professionals, in working with students. Because again, a lot of them come right out of grad school, new professionals and so forth. And yes, you talk about working with families and you're working with administrators and so forth, but until they're in that situation, it's right in the forefront. So I think you've got to remember that they're working with people that, they have an issue, they have a concern, and you want to find that common ground. But you also have to have that basic respect and that basic courtesy and that human nature. And again, not everybody has that, and that's the reality of our world today. But I think that's not an excuse, therefore, to kind of meet them where they're at. I think it's sometimes you got to take it and say, all right, that's where they are, and I respect that, but I'm willing to approach them and deal with them in a different manner and so forth. And again, that's not to say that you don't get frustrated, you don't get upset, because that does happen, but you've got to kind of keep it in perspective. The common ingredient was, first and foremost, they were good people, and they were people who were respectful of others and cared about others. And then from there, you moved on to their strengths and their abilities as colleagues and as administrators and so forth. But the common denominator was, at their core, they were, for lack of a better term, they were good people, and they understood the value of people and how to work with others to achieve common goals.
John, I want to thank you for sharing your one thing. Like we said at the beginning, it's so simple, but it's those simple things that I think a lot of times get lost. And people matters. I think that's something you could put above your office door so people know that. You have been listening to the Student Affairs One Thing, a podcast that asks a simple question of seasoned student affairs professionals. What is one thing you have learned that has helped shape your professional career? I want to thank today's guest, John Denio, Associate Vice President for Student Affairs at Bryant University. I've been your host, Stuart Brown, the developer of studentaffairs.com, one of the most accessed websites by student affairs professionals. I hope you will join us next time for another episode of the Student Affairs One Thing.